Continue. All right. Hi, this is the review session for Bisc423. And the first half is going to be a PowerPoint presentation where I go through the practice exam, which I presume you have all downloaded and have in front of you and have all taken a fair crack at. I'm going to show you, I'm going to kind of dissect these questions and try to make them make sense. And I will show you how, show you some examples of how to answer them, essentially. Then we will break up into small groups. There's a little gimmick for this I'll show you. It's the second half is going to be run, second half is going to be longer. It's going to be run on Google Documents, and I'll send you that link when it's time to go look at it. And the first round, we're going to have, y'all are going to be answering the questions together, kind of filling out the answers, and I'm going to go around and kind of check in with you, see if you have questions as we go. The second round, we're going to rotate, so the breakout rooms will kind of turn over. And then this is going to be talking about study techniques, how you noticed other people solving these problems in the previous discussion, and how you organize your notes to figure this out. And in that second round, you're going to be sharing ideas and coming up with an idea that you want to bring to the wider group. And you're going to pick a spokesperson to bring that idea to the wider group. And then we'll come back to the big group and you'll tell us what ideas you came up with and share it with the group. What will be recorded is the big group discussions and this intro thing where we go through the questions. I'm not going to record what happens in your small groups. Sound good? Any questions? Beautiful. So as you look at these questions, Harold and I came up with a few things that we want you to keep in mind when you're answering them. Every question is designed to be answered in one or just a couple sentences. So keep your answers short and to the point. Make it easy for me to grade. So address each aspect of the question. And don't give us extra information. Don't just word vomit all of the information you have. You do have an infinite space to write in. Don't use it, please, for my sanity. Just write the answer to the question and no more. Also, if we ask for 3 things, don't give us 5 or 7. We will just answer the first 3. If you get one of them wrong, one of the first 3 wrong, and you have a million other correct answers, you're going to lose points because we aren't going to read any of your other million correct answers. You have all the time in the world, but we don't. Start midday, take a lunch break. Proofread questions and answers all the way through before submitting. Edit your answers for clarity. When in doubt, write short sentence structures and emphasize each aspect of your answer so that I can find them easily. This is a little bit of review from last week, but I care about these points, so it's going to be more clear. Yes, use bullet points. Yes. Is good. So without further ado, let's careen into question 1. Let me just do this real quick. Didn't work. Fine, be that way. Yeah, like that. Okay, question 1. Yes, figured it out. Okay. Question 1, describe 3 functions of BMP during the nervous system development in vertebrates. Describe source, effect, and context. I've color-coded this. So Dr. Hutter's comment on this was, you get a point deducted for each thing you're missing, but you can't drop below 0. So having a complete and concise answer is important here. Because if you look, you're doing 3 functions, and for each function, you're going to do source, effect, and context. That's 3 aspects. You only get 6 points. So 3 functions, each of which are worth 2 points. That's how that breaks down. So if you get one of these wrong, you're going to lose half credit on that aspect. So these are 3 things to describe, and each thing has 3 elements. Make sure that you've formatted your answer accordingly, so it's easy to see the pieces. That way, I know that you're not missing anything. So an example of a correct answer is this. Here's one of the options. So during spinal cord development, there's our context, BMP from the roof plate, there's our source, acts as a morphogen to specify a range of dorsal neuronal fates. That's the effect. Nice and clean cut. I can see all of the different bits. I can draw a little check mark on top of each one. Feel good? So this is the point where you think about all of the other million different things that you could write here. You only get to write 3. But when we go into groups, share the 3 that you have and tell each other how you figured that out. Any questions for the principles of answering question 1? Ooh, yes, you can, but make sure that you say the word BMP in there. So you can say noggin. Well, what? Oh, can we specify a noggin inhibitor? I think as long as you say this inhibits BMP from doing X and BMP is coming from the roof plate, or BMP is coming from the ectoderm in that context, you can talk about BMP's specific role to prevent neuronal fates and how noggin inhibits that, but it's important to make it about BMP. Does that help? Cool. Okay. Slowly but surely getting the hang of this chat business. Let's talk about question 2. Neuronal precursors give rise to different types of neurons. Describe 2 different ways how 3 or more different types of neurons can be specified from a single type of progenitor cell, and give 1 example each. So it's 6 points. So there are 2 different ways, and each one gets an example. So you're going to have a way, an example, a way and an example, a way and an example. And so for 2, sorry, not 3. So for each of the different ways, that's worth 3 points. But note he says 3 or more. That means that it's not 1 point per type of neuron. You don't have to list the type of neurons here. What he cares about is the example. So 2 different ways, 1 example each. Each example is worth 3 points. Each way plus example is worth 3 points. And that 3rd point, way, example, blank, that 3rd point is going to come from the context. He cares a lot about context. So here's the example that we did. There's morphogens, that's a way. Morphogens can be used to specify 3 or more cell fights. That's worth 1 point. And then here's the example. In the spinal cord context, sonic hedgehog acts as a morphogen to specify different types of neuronal identity in the ventral half of the spinal cord. So that example could get only 1 point if it wasn't as clear about the context and what was going on there. But because that's a nice, clear example, that gets more points. So We have a question. Can you explain in a bit more detail what you mean by context? So what I mean by context in general is the where, the what, the when. So here we have a morphogen, i.e. sonic hedgehog, is patterning the ventral half of the spinal cord. Okay, you got 3 points there. What do you want from me, right? We want to know a little bit more about the context of how sonic hedgehog acts as a morphogen to pattern the spinal cord. Where is sonic hedgehog coming from? What type of neurons is it specifying? Does that make sense? So the context is the spinal cord, it's where we are. It's not just sonic hedgehog, for example, is a morphogen. So that extra point, a 2-point answer for this example would be morphogens can be used to specify 3 or more neuron types. Sonic hedgehog is one of these things. That wouldn't give that you'd get a point for saying sonic hedgehog. Julian, is your hand up?
Yeah. I was just wondering, on the document, it said that this question was worth 4 points on the document that I have.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, it said 4 points.
Awesome, love it. I'm so
because
glad.
that would make sense if it was.
That means, yeah, I'm so glad. That means you wouldn't get a point if you just said Sonic Hedgehog.
So it says provide one example of each in 2 different ways. So it would be like morphogens can be used, and then the example would be Sonic Hedgehog.
Though the example would be Sonic Hedgehog acts as a morphogen to pattern ventral neuronal identities within the spinal cord.
So you still give the context anyways, even though that the point isn't necessarily coming from the context.
Without the context, you won't get credit for saying Sonic Hedgehog. Without the context, we don't know if you actually know what Sonic Hedgehog does or if it's just a morphogen.
So the context is required regardless of the points or not.
Yeah, and we're gonna we're gonna keep coming back to that.
So 2 different ways, one example of each, and then context. Okay, I was just wondering why it took 6 points when on the document.
That is great. I'm so glad you noticed that. This is me and Harold writing our different things simultaneously and not perfectly aligning which versions we submit. So sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So regardless of the points, context is required.
Context is always required. If there's a possibility to get partial credit on something, you'll get extra credit for better context. If there isn't a possibility to get partial credit, you will have context required.
Okay, thanks.
You won't get credit if you don't have context. So when in doubt, add context. And that's one of the exceptions of the spew all the info. When in doubt, if you have more context for this specific situation, do that. Is good. So if you, yeah. Does that help? Okay.
I just wanted to ask also, you don't need to then include like how Sonic Hedgehog activates and represses certain transcription factors to create these different neuronal fates, or?
You do not have to include that information. I won't get angry if you do.
Okay.
But when it's provide one example each, and you're doing an example, we'll see later what it looks like when they're asking for all the transcription factors involved. He'll say that with his words.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Are we good to move on?
Sorry, just to add on to context, just last question. When you say the context, if it has more than one function, you said to list the who, what, where. Can we just give the one function if it has more than one function?
Yes. In fact, if it has more than one function, it's really important that you say which function you're talking about.
Okay, but we don't have to list out all the ones, right? Because I don't know how much context we're looking for. in a given question?
Just say this acts as this in this location. The context is in this location at this time on these things.
Okay, because I know we're going to be getting points taken off for missing things, so I don't want to miss things.
Don't miss things, yeah, but do that in the moment thing for the things. Like it's pretty clear on the things, which things are things. I'm just going to say words
Okay.
7 times. It's going to be great. No. So let's move on to the next one, and hopefully it'll clear things up a little bit. Okay. So in Drosophila, a single neuroblast is selected from a cluster of proneural cells by lateral inhibition mechanism. How would neuroblast development be affected if a single cell within the proneural cluster lacked the Notch receptor? 2 points. So this is clearly one concept with 2 points. And the reason for that is that Harold likes to not do partial marks. He doesn't approve of 0.05, of 0.5 marks. So he'll never have a 1 point question. It'll always be a 2 point question that you could get partially right. So when you see a 2 point question, this is without 2 obvious parts. It gets a 1 sentence answer, sure, but the first point is easy to get, the second point is hard, and the difference is context and depth and nuance. So if we have a single cell without without a Notch receptor, what will that cell become? A neuroblast or an ectoderm? Someone say, yeah. Yeah, it will become a neuroblast. This is a 1 point answer, because it doesn't actually address all of the question. It doesn't address the nitty gritty. It doesn't address neuroblast development overall. The total answer is this. You'll get an extra neuroblast. Because it doesn't have the Notch receptor, it's opted out of lateral inhibition. So lateral inhibition will proceed as normal and a neuroblast will win it. And this one will also be a neuroblast in that cluster. So there's levels of understanding of the question, and we're trying to grade the level of understanding of the question. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So in clusters, isn't it supposed to be that the cell that has the runaway production of ASC to block delta and Notch can become the neuroblast? Mm-hmm. So in an instance, if you compared cells, epithelial cells, proneural cells to a proneural cell that lacked the Notch receptor, wouldn't that one just become the neuroblast in the cluster?
It wouldn't become the neuroblast in the cluster. Because it doesn't have a Notch receptor, it can't be inhibited. Okay, so it will also inhibit those around it, won't it?
Yes. And if I'm thinking, if it's not affected by other cells nearby, then it would win out versus other cells. That's what I think. I originally thought it was 2 neuroblasts, but then I was like, isn't this a competition for one cell in the cluster to become the neuroblast?
Yeah. Well, you're right, I think. I will check in with Harold and get better answers.
I mean, it's not a problem if this isn't on the midterm, you know?
This specific question will not be on midterm. But I'm glad that you said something. Anyways, because that's something I'll say to Harold.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Go team, I guess. All right, last one. Flail. Different types, but they're not neighboring cells, then the first neuroblast wouldn't be inhibited. Yeah, I agree. I think you're still gonna get 2 neuroblasts in the cluster. I will.
It just says within the cluster though. So perhaps the cluster is developed with the neuroblast, and then the second one, like in the cluster, just forms another neuroblast afterward, maybe.
Yeah, I'm gonna
But it
ask.
says it's within the cluster.
Yeah, but I'm also aware of time, so we need to move on.
Sorry.
But this is a great question. And I'm really glad that you spoke up. Lovely. Positive reinforcement. Okay, question 4. Different types of neurons can be specified at the same time, either by a morphogen or sequentially. Give 2 examples where different types of neurons are specified sequentially. What is the time critical factor, i.e. what changes over time? So specifically, because they're saying what is the time critical factor, the word factor here tells you we want gene names. We want actual things that are actually happening. This is a 4-point question. There's 2 examples, 2 aspects of each aspects requested for each example. The cause of the change and the effect of the change. So here's my answer for it. In Drosophila context, neuroblasts transiently express several different transcription factors. Here they are, one after the other. And this is lifted from the slide. Look, I looked these up in the slide. The fate of a neuron is determined by which transcription factor is expressed in the neuroblast at the time of birth. So here we have the type of the neurons specified sequentially, i.e. the neuroblasts transiently express things, and the different type of genes expressed determine the fate of the neurons. And we have what changes over time, i.e. this handful of transcription factors. And we have the context. We have that we're in Drosophila. We have that this is happening at the, like, it's fleshed out. Are there any questions about these things? Love it. Okay, so